Hello and welcome to the CX Files for February 27th, 2025. My name is Mark Hillary and I'm in Sao Paulo, Brazil.
And I'm Peter Ryan. Mark, greetings to you from Berlin, Germany, where I am attending CCW 2025. Really, I think the cornerstone of trade shows when it comes to the contact center industry, CX and otherwise, not just in Europe, but really around the world. Had a chance to catch up with some amazing folks. Always nice to see some familiar faces and make new friends.
That's fantastic. Always good to be out there in Germany. I'm looking forward to getting out there in a few months myself, but I'll be doing a sort of a rail trip around Europe, like taking the train between Amsterdam, Paris, Berlin, and London. So that should be good.
Well, I know that you'll have a great time. It's always nice to get over to this side of the pond, and I have to say that the amount of times I've visited Germany over the course of the past couple of years, I feel like I should be applying for citizenship. I already do have European citizenship from Ireland, so maybe it's just worth transferring it over to Deutschland.
Okay, cool. So, why don't we talk about the session, the interview this week then? I spoke to Audrey William, who is the principal advisor at Ecosystem, and I know that you've known Audrey for a long time as well, haven't you?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Audrey. She does an amazing job looking at what's going on in our space. She's got, I'd say, one of the most analytical and real world practical minds that you're going to find. And it was a real coup to get her on the podcast. I know she's been a previous guest, but we always enjoy our interactions with her.
Yeah, but I think it's actually a few years since she was on before. So it might have even been during the pandemic. I'll have to go back and look at the archive. But yeah, it was great to talk to her again. And of course, so much has happened. I caught up with Audrey, and it was a subject that I know is close to your heart, and that's AI in CX. But we sort of specifically focused on some of the blockers and some of the problems that AI is posing at the moment, because quite often we see it framed as a like a silver bullet. It's coming in to save money and to optimize everything. But I talked with Audrey about some of the things like the training costs and the problems of just getting it up to speed and making it work well, and the kind of cost involved in doing that, and really just some of the blockers that you don't sort of hear about when you're just looking at the shiny PowerPoint videos.
Yeah, no, and I mean, I think the blockers are very real, and it's very important that as an industry and as industry leaders, we all become familiar with what some of these blockers might entail. And I think it's interesting, Mark, because now it's no longer the big shiny object that everybody wants to try and grab, or the brass ring that people are looking to go for. Now there seems to be much more pragmatism around what AI is going to mean in CX, certainly from the standpoint of how it can optimize the industry, but also what it can do in regards to making sure that the efficiencies are in place and what some of these obstacles might be. So I think that this discussion with Audrey is going to be very important.
Yeah, absolutely. So why don't we go straight to the interview with Audrey William? Audrey, we said that we were going to have chat about AI and some of the challenges that have been blocking adoption in CX, or some of the challenges that companies are facing around this right now, because it's a subject that just about everybody is talking about. We've talked about it many times on the podcast, but I wanted to ask you about some of the developments that are taking place. When we were swapping emails to talk about this, and you mentioned around agentic AI and
Yeah,
how this is something that could be changing both the enterprise and the way that consumers interact with brands. So, I mean, do you think that which side do you think is the most important? I mean, is this going to be a consumer change for agentic, or is this a big enterprise story then?
yeah, sure, Mark. I think anyway, great to be back on the show, and great to be on CX Files. I think we're entering a very big era, the era of agentic AI, and it's going to change consumer side, but also uh, across the organization. And here's what is very different about this, because it means that now we can have conversations, customers can have conversations in a seamless manner. And this is because from this metadata and the learning of the data from various repositories, I think the big difference here, Mark, is the AI is now adapting itself into the situation they're in. So, imagine now vast amount of data, but the data now is fed to the AI, and the AI can actually almost work in any kind of situation they're thrown into. And that's big, because if you think about it in the customer experience world, agents are thrown into multiple situations where they have to deal with difficult customers. They have to answer all types of questions, and sometimes some scenarios might be quite shocking. So I think the promise of agentic is the ability to adapt and make sense of the situation. So I think that's one big step, and then from there is the next big level, which we're hearing the vendors talk about. And of course, this is also the promise of agentic, and that is autonomous decision making. So the AI or the AI agent can now make decisions without always looking for further clarification. So that really changes things. And if you look at the days of how we've been talking about conversational AI, and I've had this discussion with you as well in the past, and chatbots, it's always the going back and forth. And as much as a lot of brands are focusing on the design element and the data element, these two elements are always key. It's always not been as seamless. You know what I mean, Mark? It's always been like, after a while, sometimes the bot gets confused and they can't really continue. And I think this is where agentic comes in, because it takes conversational AI to a completely different level. And if you look at vendors like Cognigy, they're one of the earliest vendors that have been showcasing this. I think Cisco is a great example of a vendor that's also just released a voice bot, which has elements of agentic, where the conversational is now going to be back and forth, like you and I having a conversation. But I also like to point out on this whole notion, you asked me about agentic, and is this also going to change the enterprise? And I think definitely, because if you look at the way every department operates in the future within an enterprise, it's really going to change the way even a CIO or the buyer of technology operates, because now the departments, the individual departments, the finance department, for example, or the marketing department, they will now go to the CIO, and the finance guy will say, I need, AI agents to take care of receivables, payables, compliance, because we only have 3 staff. And all of a sudden, the buyer or the CIO has to make a decision around headcount. And that is really going to be the future. So the role of the CIO also changes. And I also want to point out that, Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, he also made a very interesting statement just a couple of months ago or weeks ago, where he said, we're actually entering a new era of where SaaS is actually dead. So what he's saying is, in the past, we used to buy software, we used to buy all these SaaS applications, and they gave us the intelligence. But now he's saying that intelligence and that logic is going a layer beneath, and that is where all these AI agents are going to come as an army. They're working together, they're working hard, like they're working in a gym. So I think we're in for some changes, but of course, this is early days. Not many vendors have released it yet. Some are in the process, and I think agentic is still in its early days. So we will start seeing good use cases, I think, within probably 18 months or 24 months, because customers are still concerned. They want to know what is this going to be like for them, and how their customers see it, or agents are going to use it.
Yeah, yeah, and I suppose what you're saying there is that this goes far beyond just the customer service environment. Then, so within the enterprise, we can be talking about automating discrete tasks. It may not
That's
always, yeah, so it may not always map onto jobs or people, but if you take a task like accounts receivable,
yes.
you could automate that. You could maybe automate some human resources processes, and the same as parts of customer service as well. So there's lots of sort of discrete tasks across the enterprise that you're saying can be handled this way.
Yes, and especially in countries where it's very expensive, Australia, for example, to add headcount in finance departments or to add on more customer service agents, once you start having this layer of AI agents to do compliance, to look at containment rates, to look, to check on back office issues. I think it's really going to change the way departments start operating, because they're not going to rely just on their 5 core staff or the 10 staff they have. You suddenly have different staff that you could never hire, but they're going to do all this functionality for you. Of course, they're going to assist the main team, but I think this is going to be a game changer, Mark.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned that there's already a few vendors, tech companies that are offering this type of software. So if I was going to train an AI language model to work on customer support, for example, I know that there's companies out there like Core AI and Verint, but how do they work? I mean, if I was a customer service manager and I was thinking, um, how can I automate part of my volume using this software? Where do I begin?
Yeah, I mean, when I start listening to AI agents and a lot of the vendors talking about it now, the one vendor that's really caught my attention, I would say, in the last 1.5 years, Mark, is actually Verin. Verin is a vendor that has been working by releasing specific AI agents for the contact center, in the last 1.5 years, and it's quite impressive because now that everyone's starting to talk about this army of agents, they've already released agents. For example, like they have a scoring bot, which, for example, looks at data points to look at the sentiment, but it's not just sentiment, it's giving supervisors alerts that whether they're in the right direction. And it's voice for now. It looks at over 200 data points. It looks at pitching, phrasing, but that's just one bot that they have. Then they've got what they call the Genie bot, for example, and this is a speech analytics tool. And we all know that speech analytics in the past is amazing, but you need analysts to find the insights. I've spoken to so many teams, and they've always said that this is one of the toughest areas where you need headcount to make sense of the data. But all of a sudden, you've got bots now that can break this down for you and give you the analysis. So they've released that as well. Then they've got quality monitoring bots where you want to also they also have got compliance bots. They've got knowledge automation bots. So what they've started doing, and they've released these bots probably like in different stages. So in the early days, they only had 3 bots, and then they came up with 5 and 7. Now, if you look at what they're offering in the market, it's something like 40 bots, and these bots are delivering serious outcomes for enterprises. And I've encouraged a lot of buyers to, take a look at what they're doing, because it's real. These outcomes are being talked about where large, healthcare departments, enterprises are saving time, saving costs. And it's this army of bots that Verin has deployed that is working coherently, some of them coherently, like they're all in a gym, to actually make the outcomes better now for the agent, for the back office teams, to give them alerts that they need in real time. And they also acquired a company not too long ago, like TimeFlex, and even that is now a bot that they've introduced where it's automated within all the other bots, but it's so good with the workforce management and planning that agents can actually do shift bidding. And it's highly automated, but it's also fed back into this whole piece. So they're not just what I like about what they're doing is they're not just talking about AI agents. They've actually now named these AI agents with full functionality, which I think is where the market will head towards. In the end, when a vendor comes out with all these bots, they will have to give the bots certain names, but they will have to be deep functionality, because that's how then the CIO or the buyer will know, well, what kind of agents do I buy to go ahead and achieve what I want to achieve. And if speech analytics is a priority because I'm not getting the data and the insights I need, then I will probably need 5 of those bots to be deployed.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I can see that having that kind of like a specific skill or function would help with the initial rollout. But I was just thinking that if I was running let's say a retailer, if I was at Walmart or Decathlon, one of these sort of international retailers with thousands of stores, then I know that the bot is going to be asked questions like addresses of stores, opening hours, all these kind of repetitive questions. So that's going to need like a training period. I'm going to need to be able to sort of fill a database full of all this information, so any bot anywhere will be able to answer these basic questions. Is that a challenge? Is that something that people find as a blocker because they think that this stuff is just off the shelf, and then they realize they need to do months of training?
Yeah, it's true, Mark, and I think many buyers are concerned about the training costs, because I don't think it's as simple as out of the box at this stage, because when you buy these agents, you also have to understand now how they're going to integrate easily into CRM, into business systems, into workforce management data. And there's also the integration cost. And I think with training costs, with integration costs, that there are also going to be concerns now, because agentic is still new and that it's still very early stages with voice bots. How companies will say, well, I want to start building these guardrails, but not just building them. I want to now test these guardrails. I want to test the solution, because it is going to be a concern. And so that also becomes a challenge. And I think companies will want to spend on that as well, because one of the things companies will do, I think, in 2025 and 2026 is they will definitely start experimenting, especially with these vendors now who've announced it, who've said they've got these particular solutions, or they've got these voice bots that are agentic. Well, the risk on my end, if I'm a big brand, is I really want to experiment it, but I also, to your point, what is the upfront training cost, the time taken to build it, but I also want to build the guardrails, and not just build it. I have to keep testing it. And then there's the other complexity of going with multiple large language models, because the world of LLMs, as we know, is rapidly changing, and we know how many new players entering the market, and they will come with specific functionality even in the next 6 months or 12 months. And so companies will not just go with one LLM, they'll want to buy multiple LLMs. So that's also, how do you then bring that together? And I think one area I'll also add is, apart from some of these costs, there's also testing the user experience, because we can say that it's all agentic and it's going to make autonomous decision making, and the solution can adapt in any environment. But I think it's about, well, now if I want to make it work, I also don't want this to scare my customers. If it's within the environment and with agents, you can still control it. But once you expose it out and it's a voice bot that's having a 5-minute seamless conversation, you want to make sure that it's right. So I think that there will be a lot of work to be done in this space, Mark. And definitely buyers will see the risk, and they will want to make sure that that they're ready for this as well.
And does that mean that there may well be a lot of interest at the moment, but some discouragement because of some of the challenges? So I guess you could say the activity now is a lot of pilots and experimentation rather than full on global rollouts.
Absolutely, you're 100% spot on. That is exactly what's going to happen in 2025. I don't see it taking off in a big way. I actually think because it's still new and only a few vendors have announced agentic contact center solutions, it's going to be a lot of experimenting and pilots, absolutely, because for them to then move to the next level and say, okay, I like this, and now I want there's 300 voice bots. Well, I've got to be really confident of the solution.
Yeah. Is one of the opportunities here to break down silos inside the enterprise as well? And I'm kind of thinking of anything that's customer facing that works alongside customer service, like marketing or sales, for example, that, often they've been quite discrete departments that are not connected into the service team. But I would imagine that if you've got more automation, CRM, then you should actually be able to get a lot more coordination between these teams.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing about marketing and customer relationships, customer service. In reality, they should be connected because many times they're serving the same customer, but the silos are so separate that I was speaking to a few CMOs recently as part of a project, and we were talking about this exact topic. And they said to me, in an ideal world, we would actually like to know the types of conversations that agents are having with customers, even if it's just the high level overviews about what they're saying about the brand, what they feel about the campaigns. Did they like this? Did they not like it? Because it really helps them then determine how to market solutions better. But unfortunately, I think the breakdown inside all of this has also been marketing having their stack of applications. They've always relied on, CRM. They've also always relied on their own, marketing applications that they use from Adobe and a lot of other marketing automation systems. Um, and after a while, as they want to get further into deciphering data, they're stuck, and they can't really then work with the other departments in the organization. And I've asked this to customer service teams as well, and they're saying, because we don't have the same KPIs and we're not working together, um, it's really hard to make this work where marketing and customer service teams come together. But I think if you look at now how AI agents are going to shape every department, I think this is where the marketing team has the ability now to go really deep into getting the kind of data they want, getting the kind of data from almost nearly every single repository, and whether it's contact center applications, but the pulling together of the data, and think of it as the wider CDP, but really having this army of marketing agents that can even help the marketeer now say, this campaign that you're running is actually not going to work, or these are the best campaigns, or here's all the content you need to write the best possible content that's coming. So I truly believe that while marketeers have been relying on a certain way of doing marketing by using the kind of systems and software they have, and then not getting the full gamut of what the customer relationship is all about, I think this is an opportunity where they can deploy functional AI agents across the whole value chain of marketing. So all of a sudden, it just changes the way the CMO or just the marketing head and their assistants operate. It also affects how they're going to operate then with agencies.
Yeah, yeah, because ultimately you should. I mean, if you're connecting together these different views of the customer, then instead of having a campaign where you're pushing, I don't know, a glossy image of a new BMW or something, you
Yeah.
can be pushing a completely different message to people that already own a BMW or already own something that's similar to a BMW. So you can have much more granularity around almost like personalizing the message down to each individual based on,
Yeah,
are you
absolutely.
expecting them to spend or not? Have they spent in the last year? All these kind of variables.
Absolutely. And all of a sudden they'll realize that, you know what, the last three campaigns that we've been running the entire year, we shouldn't run it anymore because, this is what the data is actually telling us. But it's too expensive to run it. And that's why marketing teams sometimes just call off a lot of these programs, or they just don't have the ability to mine the data. But you can just imagine how this is going to change the way they operate in the future.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, well, I mean, just to wrap up, then let's just look at some of the noise. Certainly, this is endlessly covered in the media right now, and
Yes.
we've been talking about some of the opportunities, but also the challenges as well. So, I think that if you were talking to a CX leader, and you were
Yeah.
thinking, and they were asking about some of the software, some of the services that are available to pilot now, then what kind of information or suggestions would you be making for 25 rather than 5 years in the future?
Yeah. I think the one thing I will say to buyers is do not be afraid, because it is daunting and there is so much information out there, like you rightfully pointed out. And every vendor, every contact center vendor, CX vendor is going to talk about AI agents and agentic AI this year. So they will start selling their solutions. But I think if the buyers don't run any tests and pilots this year, I think you will also be left behind. So my advice is, do not be afraid and really immerse yourself in it. Immerse yourself in it and pick a few vendors. Pick a few vendors that you think are doing it well because you're seeing some of the use cases, or they've been talking about it from a different angle, and that angle resonates with some of the problems you're trying to solve. Well, then go on a trial basis and ask for those AI agents. Can I maybe go on a trial and have 5 AI agents for free for the next 3 months and see the outcomes that you get from it? I think that's very important, because rather than buying the 40 agents or the 50 agents, try a few of these functional agents and see the outcomes. See the outcomes. But if it works, then you know that you are going to end up saving a lot of money on customer service costs. But not only that, you're also going to save costs in terms of time and handle time and a lot of queries that back office has been struggling with. And you know what? You'll end up deploying 10 of those same functional agents. So I think it's about not being afraid, and running the pilots, and then also exploring. Don't just stick to one vendor. Try 3 or 4 vendors and really embrace it. I think, I would ask every CX leader now to embrace it, because if you don't embrace it as well, you will be left behind. I mean, this space, as you know, Mark, is moving at such a phenomenal rate right now, with so many LLMs coming on board, but so many changes. Um, and so by this time next year, there could be a completely new vendor offering something very compelling in the market. So it's moving at the speed of lightning. So if you're not going to immerse yourself in it, you will be left behind. And also in the era of voice bots, now that we're starting to see some voice bots emerge, for example, like Cisco, they've just announced what they think is a fantastic version of agentic voice bots that can actually have a seamless conversation and end the conversation. Well, then try that solution, test it, see how it works, and meet the team there. So I think this is about not being afraid and really just embracing it And at the end of the day, if you're getting closer to it, I think it will be very important to also work with the right team of experts. So whether it's a systems integrator or I think BPOs will also want to embrace this if they're looking at some functionality, but work with experts that can build and test the guardrails, test the user experience, because these are all some of the important elements that you don't want to miss out on before you go live.
Yeah, well, I think that's some great advice, and that's probably going to be the headline. Embrace it and don't be afraid.
Thank you, Mark, as always, and always great to chat with you. And thanks, as always, for having me on your show.
Thank you, Audrey. That was great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the CX Files podcast. We really appreciate your feedback and suggestions. You can reach myself, Mark Hillary, or Peter Ryan via LinkedIn. Please also leave a rating or review on your favourite podcast provider, as that helps more people to find us. As always, we'd like to thank Chris Haig at Traction Media for the CX Files graphics. See you next week.